as you know, the creeds, Nicene Creed, Nicene Constantinople Creed, how do they define God? For them, God is the Father, right? Not the Trinity.
That's true. That's because they are inheriting language from an earlier tradition, which did say that the only God is the Father, and that the Son is a subordinate, divine, but not perfectly divine being. So here's another point. The whole thing about the equivocation that's involved in the Trinity. This is because the Nicene Creed inherits language from earlier generations of Christians in which the one God really was just the one ultimate principle of everything.
I shall attempt to persuade you, since you have understood the scriptures, of the truth of what I say, that there is, and that there is said to be, another God and Lord subject to the Maker of all things, who is also called an angel, because he announces to men whatsoever the Maker of all things, above whom there is no other God, wishes to announce to them. It will not be the Creator of all things that is the God that said to Moses that he was the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, but it will be he who has been proved to you to have appeared to Abraham, ministering to the will of the Maker of all things, and likewise carrying into execution his counsel in the judgment of Sodom, so that, even though it be as you say, that there were two, an angel and God, he who has but the smallest intelligence will not venture to assert that the Maker and Father of all things, having left all supercelestial matters, was visible on a little portion of the earth. Justin, on the contrary, is the first among the Christians who insisted on the numerical distinction of the Logos from the transcendent Father as a second God, and doing so, he realized that such a distinction of the Logos is a ditheism. So he preserves the monotheism by emphasizing the singularity and superiority of the divine pneumatic being, the Father, anterior to the creation, and the subordination of the second God to the first, the Father. Thus, according to Justin, the Logos was begotten by the will and power of God as a preparatory step before the creation of the universe, and not as a process of eternal creation as in Philonic theory. Though God himself is known through his works and through the prophets inspired by him, Theophilus regards these activities of revelation as performed not directly by God himself, the one without beginning, changeless, immortal, but by his hands, or powers, Logos and Sophia. The work of the Logos was not finished when it had played its part in the creation of man, for it was not God whom Adam heard or who walked in the Garden of Eden, but the Logos in the person of God. Since the Logos is divine and begotten of God, whenever the Father of all wishes he sends it to some place, when it arrives it is heard and seen, having been sent by him, and thus is found in one's place. Thus are explained the theophanies of the Old Testament. It was not the Father of all who appeared to men, but his Logos in his form. You will say then to me, you said that God ought not to be contained in a place, and how do you now say that he walked in paradise? Hear what I say. The God and Father, indeed, of all cannot be contained, and is not found in a place, for there is no place of his rest, but his word, through whom he made all things, being his power and his wisdom, assuming the person of the Father and Lord of all, went to the garden in the person of God, and conversed with Adam. The use of Logos theology in the apologists' writings, indicated by both the philosophical precedents identified here as well as the manner in which the apologists argue for the presence of the Logos in Scripture, raises two observations critical to the nature of the second person. First, the apologists believe the Logos is divine. This truth is discerned from the apologists' insistence both that the Logos acts as God in his role in creation and appearance in the theophanies, and that he is called such in Scripture. Nevertheless, the divine nature of the Logos is not equal to the divine nature of God. Rather, the nature of the Logos is a diminished or lesser divinity confirmed by the middle Platonic precedence of the diminished divinity of the world soul, as compared to the primary God, and the ability of the Logos to work in the world in creation and to be seen in the world in the scriptural theophany accounts. Second, the Logos is not a mere extension of the Most High God or a mode of his working, but he is a distinct entity separate from the Father. The revelatory function of the Logos in the works of Justin is particularly illuminating for the second point. The theophanies reveal that the entity of the Logos in the world is not an impersonal, spiritual power. Instead, the Logos is a real, concrete entity who can be seen and who can interact with humanity. The logic establishing this argument again implies that while the Logos has a divine status, it is necessarily a diminished divinity since the Logos is able to appear physically and to be present in a place, a quality denied of the transcendent, invisible Father.
You can read in Novation on the Trinity, chapter 31. He says, how is it that you don't have two gods if you have God and the Word? And he says, well, God is just the Father because the Word is caused by God. And so because he's caused by God, he's lesser. He cannot be the one God. The one God is just the cause of everything else. So here is a conception of God, which implies ultimate sourcehood, right? Fundamentality, like he's saying. But then later on, you have this notion of fundamentality as essential to God. And then you also have the Cappadocians and Alexander and Athanasius saying that the Word is exactly the same sort of thing as the Father. So all the properties, omnipotence, omniscience, the rest of them, all those things also belong to the Word. So then you have this secondary notion of sort of generic equality, or being of the same kind, and now you have basically the idea that godhood is a sort of a kind that can belong to distinct individuals or to distinct persons. So really, it's true that the Creed says that the one God is the Father, but it tries to mash that conception of fundamentality, deity as fundamental, with this alternative conception of deity as an individual or a thing that acts a certain way, has certain actions, has certain properties, etc. So there are two different conceptions of deity that are trying to be blended, and that's why you get the equivocation that he's talking about.